I'm John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Toronto, February 28th, 2025. I am here with Fletcher Morgan, CEO of TDG Gold Corp. Fletcher, welcome to Toronto.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Fletcher, when your group decided to take over a shell called Kismet and acquire the Baker Shasta project from Talisker Resources, which had decided to focus on the old Braylorn system. This Baker Shasta system has been around for a very long time. What was your strategy, your group's thinking in terms of coming up with something, doing something different so that the outcome is a system that's worth developing at a reasonable mining scale?
It's a great question. So when we first looked at it, what drew us to it was the wealth of historical information that from drilling that had happened all the way through from the 70s all the way through to when Shasta stopped operating, which was 2012. So there's about 65,000 meters of historical drilling. And so when you look at that system up there, it looks like someone took something from the Maricunga in Chile and dropped it into north central BC. And the focus historically tended to be on Baker, which is this gossinous area. There's bleach rocks everywhere. But what we were really excited about was Shasta. And the reason was that it's a relatively discrete area. And the density of drilling historically meant that we were confident moving in that there were more than the 20 to 25,000 ounces that were on the historical reserves or resource from there. That was the last calculation by Sable. Before Talisker took it over. And so moving in there, we were confident. We published an exploration target range of somewhere between 0.9 and 1.2 million ounces for Shasta. We published that before we even started drilling, and then we hit that target as of 2024.
Okay, so the last update was roughly 800,000 ounces of gold, jumping to 1.1 million or so in gold equivalent terms when you include the silver credit. It's an open pitable scenario. It's had a lot of work. What room is there to grow this bigger? Is there anything left to do, or is what you have what you're always going to have?
No, it's another great question. So we were excited not just by the main area, where we knew that there was that density of drilling to give us the confidence where we're to start. And we went in there and we drilled modern HQ-oriented core, and we learned from that as well. But there's historical drilling in what we class as satellite areas around it. And the challenge, obviously, is you want to join these things up. And so you want to work systematically. And we've identified within, in the immediate vicinity of Shasta, 5 areas that we thought were worthy of follow-up, and we prioritized those. And our game plan, very simply, was to block and tackle our way towards the east, adding ounces, following up on that, on the historical work, doing modern drilling, and trying to grow Shasta. And we absolutely believe that Shasta itself is over 2 million ounces. We think we got a shot at 3 million when you think about the greater Shasta footprint. And then there's this thing called Newbury. And Newbury is extremely intriguing. Not only has it got a big gold in soil anomaly sitting over the top of it, but also multi-element. And so that's slightly different to what we were seeing at Shasta. Newbury is intriguing again because it was the best thing that Newmont never drilled when they went up there. And so I think it was 2023, we took the discovery team from Newmont up to the Shasta site. We stood them there and we pointed them at Shasta and we said to them, tell us more about Shasta. Where do you think we should go next? And they turned around, looked up the valley and said, Newbury. The opposite direction. They said, that is where we always wanted to drill. We Newmont wanted to drill. But at the time, they didn't own it all. They had a split ownership with Esso. So instead, they turned around and made the discovery at Shasta. And when it didn't turn out immediately to be something that Newmont was interested in, they moved on and it cycled through different groups. And Newbury to this day remains the best target that Newmont identified that has never been drilled. And so the reason I'm saying that is, we were thinking, up until recently, that that Newbury area could host another Shasta, in which case, are we looking at something that is 2+ million ounces that could actually be a lot bigger?
So that's intriguing because to the east, on the Joy property of the A-Mark Freeport joint venture, where they'd spent $33 million, the absolute very last target they drilled was an IP anomaly they developed in 2023, and it resulted in the Aurora discovery in in January. And the Aurora is interesting because the Toodoggone district is known for the Chemist deposits, which are almost a billion tons. They grade 0.2 to 0.4% copper and 0.4 to 0.6 gram per ton gold. And they can even mine some of that on an underground basis. But the grades that we got from the Aurora announcement, the copper was in the sort of 0.3 to 0.6% range, but the gold, and this was what stunned everybody, the gold was 1 to 4 grams per ton over 100 to 200 meter widths, very consistent. The high spike was 8 grams per ton, and I'm like looking at this and doing a back of the napkin calculation, saying, wow, we're already seeing 8 to 12 million ounce potential just from this footprint that they've announced so far. Now, this is directly several kilometers to the east of the Shasta deposit, and there is a golden soil anomaly you've got in your presentation that stretches even into onto the Joy property, into the Aurora area. Who generated that data, and why was nothing ever done with that? And given that Newmont had this project ages ago, it's interesting that they said go north, young man, rather than east.
Yeah.
Which was the last priority for Freeport-AMark. What's that anomaly all about? Is it just downhill shed from Shasta?
No, we don't think so. So let's go back a bit. It's about 1 kilometer from Shasta. It's not several kilometers. The most westerly drill hole that they drilled is around 50 to 60 meters from the mineral claim boundary, and that's about 1 to 1.1 kilometers from where we've got our existing mineral resource estimate at Shasta. So it's all within the same kind of footprint. That gold in soil anomaly that you're referring to, there were multiple studies, including some work by ourselves. And you're absolutely right. It looks like it's an over 200 ppb gold anomaly that extends over what we called then Greater Shasta, and does, when you match it up with what you see on the other side of the mineral claim boundary, which is now Aurora, it does look like it extends. Why did Newmont not follow up on it? They did. They did follow up on it. They made the Shasta discovery, but when it didn't yield Newmont-type returns for the drilling, they decided that it wasn't going to be a Newmont class kind of project. At the time, metal prices were different. The foci for the company were different. And so they walked away from it. But they left the data and information. And it took us about 1.5 years to pull all that data and information together and to then determine exactly our game plan for growing Shasta towards the towards that east, towards that mineral claim boundary. And so that informed our game plan for growing Shasta from 1.1 million ounces to 2, possibly 3 million. And so it wasn't that they didn't follow up on it. They couldn't follow up on Newbury because they only owned half of it. And so that became the focus, and we've managed to fit it all together. But also what's intriguing, and that's in our slide deck, and I encourage people to go and look at it with all the caution that you need to apply, but we also see a copper in soil anomaly. And that didn't make a lot of sense to us because we were looking for epithermal gold and silver. And so we were really focused on the gold in soil anomaly. But now, when you look at the Aurora results, that copper in soil anomaly starts to make some kind of sense. It would have had to work very hard to get through the younger volcanics to put that gold in soil footprint there. And then to answer your question, what are you seeing next door? Is it somehow related to Shasta or that system? We think it looks like a hypogene layer that has come from deeper in the system. Now, the geological model, I don't want to get too technical, but the geological model for the area, the region, is pretty well understood. There's lithological controls, then there's structural controls, and it looks to us as though, even though Shasta is in the top 225 meters, it looks to us as though what they've hit at Aurora comes from deeper and is possibly underneath Shasta. And so how did it get there? There's more work to be done by not just us, but obviously our neighbors as well. But we do think that there is strong potential that it does come over the boundary, but we don't know right now if we've got 10 feet, 100 feet, or 10,000 feet. But what we do now see, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. We've been beavering away putting together the epithermal pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. We knew that there were other interesting areas of the jigsaw puzzle that could fit together somehow, but we weren't funded to do the work. But then, fortunately for us, Freeport and AMARC went next door and put an enormous piece of jigsaw puzzle down, and now it explains some of the things that we're seeing and how they may fit together. And so we're working on it. We've got the geophysics that we had before. We've sent it off to world-class an expert to reinterpret, and what we're already seeing is a sequence of left-stepping on echelon mag anomalies that imply to us that it is part of a bigger system. And through that process of following up on each of those, John, we're going to see, we'll try and answer that question. How did Aurora get there?
Yeah, so the Toodoggone district, it's controlled by these 50-kilometer long or more major regional northwest-southeast faults. Saunders goes through your property. The pillar is to the east. That's the one I think that lines up with Chemist itself. And there's more to the east. But the controls for the mineralization, or at least the mineralized enriched intrusions, are supposed to be these extensional sort of east-west structures. And there seems to be one that goes through the Aurora discovery onto your property and farther to the northeast. It's interesting that AMARC acquired the Brenda property from Canasil quite quickly. When we look at that IP anomaly that AMARC has provided, you get the sense that it goes northwest, southeast. But what if it goes sort of more west to east is the system? What's the current thinking? And I understand there were some results this morning that may shed new light on where this is going, or perhaps it's really, really big, like billion-ton type systems such as we have down at Chemist, but with much better grades.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is you're right. The structural controls through this area are really important. And it's that southeast, northwest structural corridor that is really our focus. But I think if you extend that to the southeast, I think you'll find that Saunders fault really is related to that Chemist as well. It's not been properly mapped through the area, certainly not on our side of the property boundary. We haven't had that proper geological mapping done. We've got a patchwork of historical work, so there's a lot more work to do on it, but that main structural corridor is pretty obvious. Okay, and you're right, it's that cross-cutting faulting that actually seems to somehow control, maybe even concentrate the mineralization. And we see that exactly through the north end of Aurora, coming through past Shasta and around Newbury. And that orientation, if you put Shasta and you think of that alongside Aurora, that's exactly the same orientation that you see at Chemist, in terms of how Chemist was discovered and how parts of it were mined and maybe mined in the future. And so we do think that that is absolutely relevant, but we haven't done enough work. We were never funded to do IP. We were never funded to do that baseline geological mapping to try and understand the bigger potential of the system, and now we are. And so that happens this year. And so again, I think we'll answer those questions. It won't be immediate, but we're mobilizing in early May. And we expect to hit the ground running, IP from mid-May onwards, and we expect and mapping in parallel, and we expect to start having some answers for everyone in the next few months.
Now, what's interesting about the Aurora discovery is that the upper half of the intersections was in the Hazelton volcanics, which are younger, and their dist is not being very permissive for mineralization. And yet here we have the same grades as in the intrusive rocks beneath in the Hazelton rocks. And much of that area on your eastern flank of the Baker Shasta project is mapped as Hazelton rocks, and for good reasons have not been really looked at. How much, beyond checking what the extension potential is of the Aurora discovery onto the TDG ground, what is the potential for repetitions of this along your whole eastern flank of your property? Yes
is the short answer, but you're exactly right again. What we think is going on with Aurora, and more information still needs to come out, is that they're at that major lithological contact. And that is, we think, around 450 meters below Shasta, if it's there. And we have never drilled below 225 meters because that's where the gold and silver is located. So we think that even though they intercepted it in shallow, shallow on the Aurora side, it doesn't mean that it isn't underneath Shasta and possibly about 450 meters depth. So how could it get that deep? Well, it could be downshifting from the faulting. And so again, more work is required, but ultimately the real test will be drill, baby, drill.
Now, one final question. When the news came out, you didn't have much money. Now you have over 15 million working capital. Skeena Resources came knocking on your door and helped you raise most of that money. It reminds me a lot of 1995 when Tex Normkevel saw the ovoid intersections of diamond fields and handed diamond fields $150 million. Now that's an order of magnitude more, but they walked in, got no rights or anything in terms of back end or rights of first refusal, and that helped Friedland be able to really test the ovoid without dealing with the Bay Street, House Street crowd. Now, have you given Skeena any rights? I know they're just under 10%, but because this is going to be a consolidation play, I mean, Freeport's probably going to end up wanting to own everything. Right now you have 100% of the project. Where does the balance of power reside right now in terms of TDG's management and decision making?
It's another great question. Let me come at it from a slightly different angle. In the immediate aftermath of the Aurora discovery, we were very concerned about being taken under on the cheap because we've always believed that Shasta, Greater Shasta, Newberry had that potential to be part of a bigger system. And in actual fact, we brought on board through Stephen Quinn, our chair, a world-class group of experts to help us try and understand that bigger potential. And they've been on board for a couple of years now, and they guided us. You may have seen that in 2023, we undertook the first property-wide lithic drainage sampling survey. And that was specifically aimed at trying to characterize the full extent of the opportunity there, not just through the gold and silver lens, but also copper, gold, moly, porphyry. And so we've been working on it. In the immediate aftermath of the discovery, we've had that kind of pieces of the jigsaw coming together moment. It was then a case of trying to get the broader shoulders to work with us to prevent being taken under, but to give us those immediate dollars that we knew we needed in order to be able to follow up. Now, the way I think of what's happened is everything we planned for 2027, okay, we were going to block and tackle to 2 million ounces, show the economics of it, and then hope to justify a larger market cap in the context of whatever the prevailing commodity prices might be, raise more dollars, and afford ourselves the luxury of taking some of the bigger swings. That's now right on our lap. And that's the fit with Skeena. Skeena is all about aggression, agility, creativity. They really set their stall out as that kind of company. And if you go and look at what they've achieved with Eskay Creek and also some of the other exploration that they've been undertaking, that is their hallmark. And so we are a fit. Now, to answer your question in terms of the balance of power, investor rights, etc., right now that Skeena investment comes with no investor rights. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't necessarily want that in the future if it made sense. But we've tried to learn lessons from other groups that got into bed with someone much bigger too quickly and too far. So there are various examples. So we wanted to try and be cautious, but at the same time, give ourselves the real firepower to do the work. And what I'm hoping to happen, and I think this is important, is that over time, we'll start to leverage some of the expertise and experience. And what some of your audience may not realize is that we are in, there are 4 First Nations that in whose traditional territories we're fortunate to explore. We work in very close partnership, allyship with them. And one of the most organized and biggest is the Tultan. And that is exactly the First Nation group that Skeena is working with and has experience with and is pushing Eskay Creek towards that final permit. And so I think there are more synergies here than meet the eye. I don't know. It's too early to say whether Freeport's going to be the agent of consolidation. But in this world, you're either the consolidated or you're the consolidator. And so what you want to do is to at least have the optionality. And I think the immediate investment from Skeena, it's a strategic fit. There could be future synergies. I think it was the right thing to do at that time. We got it at a modest premium to market, no warrants. The Skeena percentage ownership, just to answer that, it's actually 13% now, and they've done their early warning filing. And so people will be able to see now what Skeena thinks in terms of how things progress from here. But if you also look, we're at 13% management and insiders. So I think we're allied. I think we balanced, and I think we're at the right place that we need to be right now for the obvious work. And so we're funded now for the next stage of work, and we've put that behind us. And now everybody is laser focused on the plan moving forwards. And that's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I think it's going to be a fabulous year for TDG Gold. I've been speaking with Fletcher Morgan of TDG Gold Corp in Toronto at the Metals Investor Forum. Fletcher, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Great questions.